We finally got renters. Yes, after months of repairs and cleaning and price adjustments, and honestly, a lot of learning along the way, we finally have tenants in our first rental property. In today's video, I'm going to share the details of how this all came together, why we decided to go with a property manager instead of self-managing, and what I've learned in the process. I've mentioned this before, but one of my biggest priorities was keeping the finances of this rental property completely separate from our personal finances. That's why I've been using Baselane, which is an integrated banking and bookkeeping platform built specifically for real estate investors like me. Baselane is a financial technology company. It is not a bank, and banking services are provided by Thread Bank, member FDIC. Baselane actually replaces 6 to 9 different tools that I could use as a real estate investor by bringing everything into one dashboard in one place. So I can track every property expense and tag it into this rental inside of Baselane. I can keep tenant rent and security deposits in property specific sub accounts, and I can have everything organized and ready for when tax season rolls around next year. For me, that makes this property a real business from the start instead of being something muddled into our personal finances, and that gives me a lot more confidence moving forward. So if you are a landlord or you're just getting started with real estate investing, I'll leave a link in the description where you can set up your own Baselane account and get organized from day one. So let's talk about our big milestone, getting renters into our rental property. It definitely took longer than I expected. We listed this property back on June 22nd at one price. We quickly realized that the market in our area had shifted, demand was softer, people were being very cautious about the higher rent prices because of the economy, of course, and we had to adjust the pricing. We ended up lowering the rent to be more competitive, and that made a world of difference, and that helped us get our first tenant. Making that pricing change made all of the difference. We got more interest, we had more showings, and eventually we secured tenants 2 months after we listed the property. This was a huge learning experience for me. Sometimes you have to follow the market instead of fighting it, and sometimes you don't have things work out how you expect, but they will work out if you keep going and try to make it happen. Finding a tenant was pretty difficult for us. We had a lot of people apply, we were getting applications, and some people then after applying ghosted. They changed their mind, they went with a different property. Some people did not like the price and tried to negotiate down. There were so many different things that happened during this process, but it was all for learning, and I learned a lot. While we were getting all these applications and vetting people and going through this tenant screening process, both on my own and with a property manager toward the end, I learned a lot about what to look for, and I looked at things like income verification, so 3 times the rent. I looked at their credit history with credit minimums of about 620 to rent the property, eviction checks to make sure they didn't have any recent evictions. Then we looked at rental history and references and overall communication during the process, whether they were responsive, were they excited, did they try to negotiate, were they kind of rude? There was a lot of input to kind of decide who was the right tenant. It also really showed me how important it was to have consistent criteria, not just picking the very first person who applies, but making sure that they would be a good fit long term based on their ability to pay, their excitement about the property, and whether or not we just get along and mesh well. It's honestly not about picking the first person who applies, and I'm glad that we did not. It's about making sure that the person is going to be a long-term good fit and potentially could stay there for more than 1 year. So that's why we took our time, and we didn't actually go with the first person who applied, who could have rented the property, and we did end up waiting a little longer than I first expected. So I did just briefly mention this, but the other big decision that we made was whether or not to self-manage this property or hire a property manager. At first, I thought I might handle it myself to save money. I could manage a rental property, I could self-manage, it's not that big of a deal. But once we were in the thick of things with repairs and this tenant screening and the showings, that was kind of where I decided to hire a property manager. The tenant communication and the multiple showings to find a tenant was where I realized that I didn't actually want to do that, and I didn't realize how much time it would take with my limited capacity due to having little kids and also taking over some of my mom's responsibilities due to her having a stroke recently. I just needed help. I had to outsource this. And ultimately, we decided that a property manager would be a good fit for several reasons. Number one, they handle the tenant communications. So that means they handle all of those late night calls. They handle all of the problems that might pop up. Yes, they might have to call me and ask for a permission to do something or ask me for my input. But for the back and forth with the tenants, that's on them, and I don't have to do any of that. Also, they manage things like lease enforcement and legal compliance and all of those things that, while I can look up and will know, I don't have as much experience doing. And they are doing that for hundreds of other people. And I think that that's very helpful to have someone that has the experience to kind of do this for me and also guide me through this process. And third, they already have systems in place, which saves us time and stress because we don't have those systems yet. And maybe one day we will, but right now we can hit the ground running with systems in place because the property manager has them. And then the final reason was that because the property manager that we chose is also willing to share and let me learn from her so I can eventually decide to self-manage if I want to. The person we chose very much has taught me a lot already, and I expect that to continue. She's been fantastic and well worth the cost. Yes, it costs money, 10% of the monthly rent, but for us, that was worth it for the peace of mind and the time savings. Honestly, there's no way I would have been able to do all of this with my family situation over the last 2 months. So I'm incredibly grateful we were able to hire a property manager and she helped us get this rented. Now let's talk about the numbers because that's what you're all here for and that's always the big question. Our monthly mortgage on this rental property is $1,500. We listed the rent at $1,875 and that is what our tenants are paying. We also hired a property manager and she does cost money. So her monthly fee is about $185. And on top of that, because she found us the tenants, she gets half of the first month's rent. So that fee to find a tenant was about $937. So here's how all of that shakes out. On a normal month, after the mortgage payment, after the property management fees, we are left with about $190 of positive cash flow. And because our loan is a 15-year loan, we will also have $751 per month in equity increase from the mortgage being paid. But of course, in the first month, because of the lease-up fee, we only will have about $750 coming to us, so roughly half the mortgage payment, and we'll still make half ourselves. But going forward, this property should cash flow a small amount per month, and of course, it will be paying the loan down so that eventually it will be paid off and increase the amount of cash flow coming back to us. Obviously, $190 per month is not a life-changing amount of money right away, but it's steady and it gives us experience, equity pay down, and the chance to learn the ropes potentially for future rentals that we may purchase. This first rental has been one big learning curve, and some of the biggest lessons so far that I have learned is to be flexible on pricing. The market decides what's fair, and sometimes that's not as much as you want, and sometimes it's more than you're asking for. And if something isn't working, you should change it as quickly as possible. Also, everyone said this, but it's so true. Take tenant screening seriously. The right tenant matters more than filling the space fast. Also, don't be afraid to outsource things where you need to if it keeps your business sustainable. Honestly, if I had to do everything myself without a property manager these last couple months, it would not have gone well. So I'm so glad I was able to outsource that and make this a business. Speaking of treating your rental like a business from day one, that mindset will change everything. It will change how you approach this, and it will change how your outcome looks, because you are treating it like a business, running it like a business, and that will pay off in the long term. So that's where we're at right now. The tenants are in, they are living there, systems are set up, and we've officially crossed a big milestone in our rental property journey. We are rental property investors and we have a tenant in our property. It's so exciting. I'll keep sharing updates as we go. Hopefully it's a very uneventful year and we learn more as we go without having any catastrophes, but we will see. Hopefully this first year is very uneventful and there are no catastrophes, but luckily if there are, I do have a property manager who will help contain those and figure out what to do. So I would love to know, would you self-manage a rental to save money, to save that $185 per month? Or would you rather outsource it to a property manager for the peace of mind? Obviously, I picked a property manager and I'm so excited about it. If you like this video, definitely subscribe to Pennies Not Perfection and check the description for the tools that we're using. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in this video next.